They called her broken, wolfless, a stain on the Silver Moon Pack's pure bloodline. For 6 years, Sarah Thorne had worn their mockery like a second skin, until the night the moon called to the monster they'd awoken inside her. The whisper started before Sarah even entered the dining hall. Still nothing. 22 years old and not even a flicker. My cousin shifted at 14. 14. Sarah kept her eyes down, her tray clutched between white-knuckled fingers as she navigated between tables packed with wolves who had everything she didn't. Pride, belonging. A beast that answered when the moon called. The Silver Moon Pack's communal hall stretched before her like a gauntlet. All exposed beams and long wooden tables where pack members gathered for the evening meal. She'd learned long ago to make herself small. Invisible. It never worked. Hey Sarah. The voice was syrup-sweet and venomous. Still waiting for your wolf to show up? Maybe check the lost and found. Laughter erupted from the corner table where the pack's unmated females held court. At their center sat Vivian Shade, daughter of the Beta, her auburn hair cascading over shoulders that had never known the weight of shame. Her wolf had emerged at 15, a beautiful russet creature that had every young male in the pack panting after her. Sarah's wolf had never emerged at all. Leave her alone, Viv. The half-hearted defense came from Marcus, a kind-faced warrior who'd grown up in the same year group as Sarah. But even his pity felt like acid on an open wound. I'm just concerned, Vivian purred, examining her nails. I mean, what kind of wolf can't shift by 22? Unless... Her eyes glittered with malice. Unless she's not actually a wolf at all. Maybe her mother had a little human indiscretion. The implication hung in the air like smoke. In their world, being human was the ultimate insult, weak mortal less. Sarah's mother had died bringing her into this world, taking any answers with her to the grave. That's enough. The command cut through the noise like a blade. The room didn't just quiet, it stilled. Every head turned toward the entrance where Alpha Kale Nightshade stood, his presence filling the doorway like gathering storm clouds. At 28, he'd held the Alpha position for 5 years, ever since his father fell in battle against a rival pack. He was everything an Alpha should be, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes like chips of granite. Powerful. Untouchable. He'd never spoken directly to Sarah in her entire life. He wasn't speaking to her now either. Vivian, your father wants you in his office. Kale's gaze swept the room with the detached assessment of a predator surveying his territory. When his eyes passed over Sarah, they didn't pause, didn't register her existence any more than they would a shadow on the wall. Somehow, that hurt worse than Vivian's cruelty. Vivian rose with practiced grace, shooting Sarah one last triumphant smirk before gliding toward the Alpha. Of course, Alpha Kale. Her voice dropped into a purr. Will you be announcing your choice at the lunar ceremony tomorrow night? Everyone's dying to know who you'll take as your Luna. The lunar ceremony. Sarah's stomach clenched. That's pack business, Kale said curtly, but he didn't deny it. Why would he? Every unmated Alpha chose their mate during the lunar ceremony. The night when the full moon's power was strongest, when wolves ran wild and the bonds between mates could snap into place with crystalline clarity. For the mated and the strong, it was a celebration. For Sarah, it was a reminder of everything she'd never have. She waited until Kale and Vivian left, until the attention shifted away from her and back to the usual pack gossip, before setting her tray down at the furthest table. She'd lost her appetite anyway. The bread tasted like sawdust, the meat like ash. You shouldn't let them get to you. Sarah looked up to find Elder Moira sliding onto the bench across from her. The old woman was one of the few pack members who'd shown Sarah consistent kindness, perhaps because at 93, she'd seen enough of life to know that cruelty often said more about the cruel than their victims. I don't let them, Sarah lied quietly. Moira's weathered hand covered hers. The elder's eyes were milky with cataracts, but Sarah always had the unsettling feeling that Moira saw more than most. Your time will come, child. I'm 22, Elder. If my wolf was coming, she'd be here by now. Sarah pulled her hand back, hating how her voice cracked. Maybe Vivian's right. Maybe I'm just broken. Broken. Moira tilted her head. And for a moment, something flickered across her face. Surprise? Recognition? It vanished before Sarah could name it. No, child. Some flowers bloom in spring. Others wait for the frost to crack them open. She stood slowly, leaning on her cane. The lunar ceremony tomorrow. Will you attend? Sarah laughed bitterly. I'm not allowed on pack runs. You know that. I didn't ask if you'd run. I asked if you'd attend. Before Sarah could respond, Moira shuffled away, leaving her with more questions than answers and a strange chill running down her spine despite the warmth of the crowded hall. That night, Sarah stood at the window of her small room in the pack house's eastern wing, the section reserved for the lowest-ranking wolves, Omegas, servants, and her, the girl who didn't fit anywhere. The moon hung fat and heavy in the sky, one night away from full. Tomorrow every wolf in the pack would feel its call, would surrender to the joy of the shift, would run beneath its light with their chosen mates or hopeful prospects. Everyone except her. Sarah pressed her palm against the cool glass, watching the silver light paint her skin. She'd spent so many nights like this, waiting, hoping, praying to the moon goddess for even a whisper of the wolf that should have been her birthright. The moon goddess had never answered. Maybe you're not listening for the right thing, she whispered to herself, to the uncaring moon, to whatever power might be listening. The moonlight seemed to pulse just once like a heartbeat. Sarah jerked her hand back, heart hammering. But when she looked again, it was just the moon, distant, cold, indifferent as always. She was imagining things. She was always imagining things, desperate for any sign that she wasn't completely and utterly alone in her own skin. Sleep came fitfully, full of fragmented dreams, white fur and silver eyes, a howl that shook mountains, the taste of starlight and ancient fear. When she woke, her sheets were soaked with sweat and her pulse raced like she'd been running. But she never ran. She had no wolf to run with. The next day crawled by with agonizing slowness. The entire pack buzzed with excitement for the evening's ceremony. Sarah kept to her duties, helping in the kitchens, folding linens, making herself useful in all the small, invisible ways that justified her continued existence in the pack house. You'll be watching from the house, I assume? The head housekeeper, Mrs. Chun, gave her a sympathetic look as Sarah delivered fresh towels to the bathing rooms. It's probably for the best, dear. No sense torturing yourself. No sense at all, Sarah thought as she nodded and retreated. But as the sun began its descent and pack members started gathering at the clearing, the sacred space where ceremonies had been held for generations, Sarah found herself drawn to her window again. From here, she could see the clearing's edge, could watch the shadows of wolves gathering beneath the rising moon. She could see, but she couldn't belong. Elder Moira's words echoed in her mind. Will you attend? Something in Sarah's chest pulled tight, like a string being drawn taut. The moon wasn't even full yet, but she could feel its weight, its presence, heavier than it had ever been before. Her skin prickled. Her bones ached. And for the first time in 6 years of desperate waiting, something deep inside her stirred. Not like a wolf stretching after sleep. Like a dragon opening one ancient eye. Sarah gasped, doubling over as pain lanced through her spine. It was gone as quickly as it came, leaving her breathless and shaking. What was that? Through the window, she watched the pack gathering in the clearing. Torches blazed to life around the perimeter. She could just make out Alpha Kale standing at the center, his dark silhouette commanding even from this distance. Vivian stood close to him, her body language making her intentions crystal clear. The ceremony was beginning, and Sarah Thorne, the broken wolfless girl, made a decision that would change everything. She would attend after all. Has there ever been a moment when you felt invisible, like you didn't belong? Until something inside you whispered, not anymore? What do you think is stirring inside Sarah? Share your thoughts below. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more. Sarah moved through the pack house like a ghost, keeping to the shadows as the last stragglers headed toward the clearing. The building was nearly empty now. Everyone who mattered was already at the ceremony, and those who didn't matter knew better than to show their faces where they weren't wanted. She should stay here. Lock herself in her room. Pretend the ache in her chest was indigestion, and not the howling loneliness of watching life happen to everyone but her. But her feet carried her forward anyway, out the back in trance, through the garden where herbs grew wild, toward the tree line that bordered the sacred clearing. The full moon crested the horizon like a silver eye opening, and Sarah felt that pull again. Stronger now, insistent. Her skin felt too tight, her bones hollow and strange. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to calm her racing heart. Just watch from the trees, she told herself. No one will even know you're there. The forest welcomed her with familiar shadows. She'd spent countless hours here over the years, the only place where the weight of the pack's judgment couldn't quite reach her. The sounds of the ceremony drifted through the trees, laughter, howls of excitement, the deep drum of ceremonial music that made the earth itself seem to pulse. Sarah crept closer, staying low, until she found her spot behind a massive oak at the clearing's edge. From here she could see everything. The clearing was transformed. Torches ringed the space, their flames dancing in the night breeze. The pack had gathered in a loose circle, nearly 200 wolves, all dressed in the ceremonial garb that would be shed the moment the shift began. At the center stood Alpha Kale on a raised stone platform, flanked by his beta, Vivian's father, and the pack's council of elders. Elder Moira stood among them, her milky eyes somehow finding Sarah's hiding spot across the distance. The old woman smiled. Sarah's breath caught. She knew I'd come. Brothers and sisters of the Silver Moon Pack. Kale's voice carried across the clearing with alpha command. Tonight, under the full moon's blessing, we run as our ancestors ran. We honor the bonds that make us strong pack, family, and for some. His gaze swept over the unmated wolves gathered closest to the platform. Mate. A ripple of excitement moved through the crowd. Vivian practically vibrated with anticipation, her eyes locked on Kale with predatory focus. The moon goddess has blessed our pack with strength, with unity, with purpose. Kale continued. Tonight we celebrate that blessing. We run free. We run together. He began to remove his shirt, and Sarah looked away, hating herself for the flush that crept up her neck. She had no right to watch an alpha prepare for the shift, no right to feel anything when his skin gleamed bronze in the torchlight, no right to wonder what it would feel like to stop. She commanded herself viciously. You're not part of this. You'll never be part of this. The drums intensified. Around the clearing, pack members began to shift. The sound of bones cracking and reforming, of gasps becoming growls, of human giving way to wolf. It was beautiful and terrible, and everything Sarah had never experienced. She should leave. She should go back to her room and... Well. The voice came from behind her, dripping with false sweetness. Look what we have here. Sarah spun to find Vivian standing 3 feet away, still in human form. Her ceremonial dress clinging to curves meant to catch an alpha's eye. 2 of her friends flanked her, Becca and Morgan, both recently mated to mid-ranking warriors, both wearing expressions of cruel delight. I thought I smelled something weak in the air, Vivian continued, circling Sarah like a predator toying with prey. Tell me, Sarah, did you really think you could spy on a ceremony you're not worthy to attend? Sarah's heart hammered. I wasn't, I was just what? Pathetically hoping the moon goddess might take pity on the broken little wolfless girl. Vivian's laugh was sharp as broken glass. How sad. Leave me alone, Vivian. Sarah tried to step back, but Morgan moved to block her path. Why should we? Becca chimed in. You're the one trespassing. You're not allowed at pack runs. Everyone knows that. I'm not at the run, Sarah said, hating how her voice shook. I'm just watching what you'll never have. Vivian's eyes glittered with malice. Dreaming about things that will never be yours? Like maybe. She leaned in close, her breath hot against Sarah's ear. Alpha Kale's attention. Heat flamed across Sarah's face. I don't. Oh, please. Vivian pulled back, laughing. Every unmated female in this pack wants him. But at least we have a chance. At least we have wolves. What do you have, Sarah? What could you possibly offer an alpha? The words hit like physical blows. Sarah's vision blurred with tears she refused to shed. Not here, not in front of them. That's what I thought, Vivian purred. Nothing. You're nothing. A mistake. A waste of space in the pack house. She turned to her friends. Come on. Let's get back to the ceremony. Some of us actually belong there. They started to walk away, and Sarah should have let them go. Should have stayed silent, stayed small, stayed safe. But something inside her, that strange stirring she'd felt earlier, surged upward like a wave crashing against rocks. At least I don't have to throw myself at an alpha who doesn't want me, Sarah heard herself say. The words hung in the air for one crystalline moment. Then Vivian turned slowly, her face twisted with rage. What did you just say? Fear flooded Sarah's system, but that other thing, that presence inside her, wouldn't let her back down. You heard me. Everyone can see how desperate you are. How you parade yourself in front of him like a bitch in heat. And he barely looks at you. Vivian's hand connected with Sarah's cheek in a vicious slap that sent her stumbling backward. Pain exploded across her face, sharp and bright. You dare. Vivian snarled, and her eyes began to glow with her wolf's presence. You dare speak to me like that? You're not even a real wolf. You're defective. She shoved Sarah hard, sending her crashing to the ground. Leaves and dirt scraped against her palms as she caught herself. Maybe we should teach you your place, Morgan suggested, her voice eager. Remind her what happens to wolves who forget their rank. I'm not a wolf, Sarah whispered, something strange and cold settling over her. You've made that abundantly clear. Exactly. Vivian loomed over her, silhouetted against the full moon. So why are you even here? Why does the pack even keep you? You're a burden. The moon pulsed. Sarah felt it like a hammer blow to her chest. A surge of power so intense it stole her breath. Her skin began to burn, not with heat but with cold, like starlight crystallizing in her veins. What? Vivian took a step back, her triumphant expression flickering with something that might have been uncertainty. Sarah's spine arched involuntarily. Pain lanced through her body, but it was different from what she'd always imagined a first shift would feel like. This wasn't bones breaking and reforming. This was something waking up. Sarah. Becca's voice pitched high with nervousness. What's wrong with her? Sarah tried to speak to explain, but her voice came out as a sound she'd never made before. Low and resonant, not quite a growl, not quite human. Her vision sharpened until she could see every individual leaf on the trees, every thread in Vivian's dress, every rapid beat of the pulse in their throats. And she could smell them. Not just their perfume or sweat, but their fear. They were afraid of her. The thought should have been satisfying. Instead, it terrified her. Stay back, Vivian commanded, but her voice wavered. Her eyes flicked toward the clearing where the ceremony continued, where help was close but might not arrive in time. Whatever you're doing, stop it. I can't, Sarah gasped, doubling over as another wave of power crashed through her. Her fingers dug into the earth, and she watched in horror as her nails lengthened into something sharp and silver, gleaming like polished moonlight. Not the dark claws of a regular wolf. Something else entirely. Moon goddess, Morgan breathed. What is she? Through the roaring in her ears, Sarah heard the drums stop. Heard the sudden silence from the clearing as her strange, impossible presence rippled outward like a stone thrown into still water. Every wolf in the clearing felt it. A power that made their instincts scream conflicting messages. Submit. Run. Fight. Hide. And then Alpha Kale was there, moving faster than should have been possible, still in human form but radiating dominance. His eyes found Vivian first, then Morgan and Becca, then finally landed on Sarah. Really saw her for the first time in her life. His expression shifted from command to confusion to something that looked almost like recognition. What's happening here? His voice was tight with alpha authority, but Sarah caught the undercurrent of something else. Wariness. The same wariness she'd seen in the three girls' faces. He was wary of her. The wolfless girl. The nothing. Alpha Kale, thank the goddess. Vivian recovered quickly, her voice pitching into distress. We found her spying on the ceremony, and when we confronted her she attacked us. Liar, Sarah gritted out, struggling to control whatever was happening to her body. The cold fire in her veins intensified with each passing second. Look at her. Vivian pointed at Sarah's hands, at the silver claws that had emerged. She's dangerous. She's not natural. Enough. Kale's command cut through Vivian's hysteria like a blade. His eyes never left Sarah, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Vivian returned to the clearing. Now. All three of you. But Alpha. Now. They fled, shooting venomous looks over their shoulders, but they fled nonetheless, leaving Sarah alone with an alpha who had never spoken to her before tonight. On a night when something inside her was trying to claw its way out. Kale moved closer, cautious, his body language that of a predator approaching something unknown. Not prey. Something potentially more dangerous than himself. The realization seemed to unsettle him as much as it did her. "Sarah Thorne," he said carefully, each word measured. "Look at me." She did, and immediately wished she hadn't. His eyes were dark as midnight, holding depths she'd never noticed from afar. Up close he was even more overwhelming, power and control wrapped in skin that smelled of pine and winter storms and something uniquely, devastatingly him. "What's happening to you?" Not an accusation. A question. "I don't know," she whispered, and it was the truth. It's never. Another pulse of power. The moon seemed to grow brighter, impossibly so, until the whole forest was painted silver. Sarah cried out, falling to her hands and knees as her body convulsed. And Kale, Alpha Kale, who bowed to no one, who commanded with absolute authority, took an involuntary step backward. Because for just a moment Sarah's eyes flashed open, and they weren't human anymore. They were silver. Pure, luminous silver. The color of moonlight itself. The color that every alpha had been taught to fear since before the packs were formed, since the old stories when wolves bowed to something greater than themselves. "Impossible," Kale breathed. "The Moonborn are extinct. They've been gone for centuries." Sarah didn't hear him. The power crested inside her like a tidal wave, and she knew with absolute certainty that she couldn't stop it, couldn't control it, could only surrender to what she'd always been meant to become. Her scream tore through the forest, and it was answered by every wolf in the clearing, an instinctive howl of fear, reverence, and ancient recognition. The shift began. But it was nothing like the smooth, practiced transformations happening in the clearing. This was violent, painful, wrong in the most fundamental way, because Sarah wasn't becoming what she should be. She was becoming what she'd always been, and the world itself seemed to hold its breath in terror and awe. White fur erupted from her skin, glowing like captured starlight. Her bones cracked and reformed, growing larger, far bigger than any wolf Kale had ever seen. Her face elongated into a muzzle filled with silver teeth, and when she threw her head back, the howl that emerged made every wolf in the pack drop to their bellies in submission. Even the alpha. Especially the alpha. When the transformation finally ended, a massive white wolf stood where Sarah Thorne had knelt. Easily twice the size of the largest alpha wolf, with fur that seemed to hold its own light and eyes like chips of the moon itself. A Moonborn. The original wolves. The first children of the moon goddess, before she'd diluted their bloodline to create the packs. Before she'd made them small enough that alphas could lead them instead of serve them. Sarah's wolf turned those silver eyes on Kale, and he felt every instinct in his body scream at him to submit, to bare his throat, to acknowledge the power before him. But he was an alpha. And alphas didn't bow easily. Their eyes locked, silver to dark gray, ancient power to modern authority, terror to fascination. And in that moment, as the full moon reached its zenith and bathed them both in silver light, Kale Nightshade realized two things simultaneously. First, that every story his father had told him about the Moonborn, about their terrible beauty and the fear they inspired, had been absolutely true. And second, that he was utterly, completely, irreversibly screwed. Because the mate bond, dormant and silent all his life, chose that exact moment to snap into place with the force of a lightning strike. His mate, his fated mate, the one the moon goddess herself had chosen for him, was the one thing in all the world that his alpha wolf wanted to submit to. The girl everyone had called broken. The monster everyone had taught him to fear. The silence that followed Sarah's transformation was absolute. Every wolf in the clearing remained prostrate, their bodies pressed to the earth in instinctive submission to a power that predated pack law, alpha dominance, and every hierarchy they'd ever known. Even the torches seemed to burn quieter, their flames bowing toward the massive white wolf that stood at the forest's edge. Sarah's consciousness swam in a sea of sensations she'd never experienced. Her wolf, finally, after years of emptiness, was vast and ancient and utterly overwhelming. It filled her mind with instincts she didn't understand, with power that terrified her, with a knowing that stretched back through generations to a time when wolves were sacred, when they walked alongside the moon goddess herself. And beneath it all, thrumming like a second heartbeat, was the golden thread that bound her to the alpha male still standing before her, the only wolf who hadn't dropped to his belly, though she could see the strain it cost him. "Mate," her wolf whispered, the word resonating through every fiber of her being. "Ours. No. This couldn't be happening." Not him. Not Kale Nightshade, who'd never once acknowledged her existence, who represented everything she'd never be allowed to have. Sarah tried to shift back, to return to her human form and run far away from the disaster her life had just become. But her wolf had been caged for 22 years, and she wasn't ready to relinquish control. A low whine escaped Sarah's throat, distress, confusion, fear. And Kale's expression shifted minutely. The wariness remained, but something else crept in beneath it. Concern maybe. Or calculation. Sarah. His voice was carefully neutral, but she heard the tremor beneath it. Can you understand me? She nodded, the motion strange and powerful in this new body. The moonlight seemed to cling to her white fur, making her glow like a living star. Can you shift back? She tried again, reaching for her human form the way she'd watched countless others do. But where their shifts looked effortless, hers was like trying to catch water with her bare hands. The power was too big, too wild, too other to simply release. She shook her massive head, and more distressed sounds leaked from her throat. Kale's jaw tightened. Behind him, she could see pack members beginning to lift their heads, confusion and fear warring across their faces. She heard whispers, felt the weight of hundreds of eyes on her transformed body. Freak. What is that thing? It killed the real Sarah, it must have. Impossible. The Moonborn are myths. They're not real. Silence. Kale's alpha command cracked across the clearing like a whip, and every voice cut off instantly. He turned to address his pack, his back deliberately to Sarah, a show of either trust or stupidity, she couldn't tell which. Everyone returned to the pack house. The ceremony is over. Alpha, you can't be serious. Beta Thomas, Vivian's father, pushed to his feet, his wolf lending golden light to his eyes. That creature is a threat to the pack. We have protocols for this. We have laws. I am well aware of our laws, Beta. Kale's voice dropped to a dangerous register. And as Alpha, I'm telling you that I will handle this. Personally, with all due respect, son. Elder Marcus, one of the council members, stepped forward carefully. The girl has transformed into something we don't understand. Something that our most ancient texts warned us about. The Moonborn nearly destroyed the original packs before they vanished. If even one remains, then we will deal with it rationally, not with a mob mentality. Kale cut him off. She's been a member of this pack for 22 years. One transformation doesn't change that. Doesn't it? Vivian's voice rang out, shrill with barely contained hysteria. Look at her. She's not one of us. She never was. She's been hiding what she is, lying to us. I said silence. The force of Kale's command sent several wolves stumbling backward. His eyes flashed with his own wolf's presence, and for a moment, Sarah saw the alpha he truly was, not the distant figurehead she'd watched from afar, but a leader willing to stand against his entire pack. For her. The thought made her chest ache in her massive wolf form. Beta Thomas, escort everyone back to the pack house. Post guards at the perimeter. No one is to approach this clearing until I say otherwise. Kale's gaze swept over his pack with absolute authority. That's an order. Thomas looked like he wanted to argue, but Alpha Will was Alpha Will. He bowed his head stiffly. As you command, Alpha. The pack retreated slowly, reluctantly, shooting fearful and hateful glances at Sarah as they went. Vivian lingered longest, her eyes burning with jealous rage that promised retribution. But even she eventually turned and fled, leaving Sarah alone with the alpha who apparently thought he could handle a creature designed to make alphas kneel. Kale waited until the last footstep faded before turning back to her. In the sudden silence, Sarah could hear both their hearts beating, hers fast and panicked, his slower but harder like war drums. Well, he said quietly, a strange humor flickering across his face. This is not how I expected tonight to go. The absurdity of the statement hit Sarah's overwhelmed mind, and a sound emerged from her throat that might have been a laugh if wolves could laugh. Kale's lips twitched. Can you try shifting again? I'd prefer to have this conversation with you in a form that can actually respond. Sarah tried. She tried until her new body trembled with effort, until sweat matted her glowing fur, until frustration gave way to despair. Nothing worked. Her wolf had waited too long for freedom, and she wasn't about to give it up after mere minutes. Finally, Sarah collapsed onto her haunches, her massive head dropping in defeat. Hey. Kale's voice softened, the first gentle thing she'd ever heard from him. It's okay. First shifts are always difficult. Especially. He trailed off, studying her with those dark, assessing eyes. Especially unusual ones. Unusual. That was certainly one word for it. I need you to stay calm, Kale continued, and Sarah realized he'd moved closer without her noticing. Not threatening but not casual either. Cautious. I need to know you're in control. That you won't hurt anyone. The implication stung. Sarah's ears flattened against her skull, and a low growl rumbled from her chest before she could stop it. Kale froze. Sarah. She immediately cut off the sound, horrified at herself. The last thing she needed was to prove everyone right about her being dangerous. But something flickered across Kale's face that looked almost like approval? You have fire, he murmured, so quietly she almost missed it. Good. You'll need it. Before she could process what that meant, Elder Moira's voice drifted from the tree line. I told you, Alpha. Some flowers bloom late. Sarah's head whipped around to find the old woman shuffling into the clearing, leaning heavily on her cane. She showed no fear of Sarah's transformed state. If anything, she looked satisfied. Elder Moira. Kale's tone held warning. I ordered everyone back to the pack house. And I'm old enough that your orders are more suggestions than commands, boy. Moira's milky eyes somehow found Sarah's glowing silver ones across the distance. Besides, the girl needs someone who understands what she is. And you, Alpha, need someone who remembers the old ways. The Moonborn are extinct, Kale said flatly. Every record says so. Clearly not every Moonborn. Moira gestured at Sarah with her cane. Her bloodline has been dormant, that's all. Waiting for the right moment, the right moon, the right catalyst. Her gaze slid to Kale meaningfully. Sarah's ears perked forward. What did Kale have to do with her shift? You can't mean, Kale began, then stopped himself, jaw clenching. No. That's impossible. Is it? Moira's smile was knowing. Tell me, Alpha. What did you feel the moment she completed her transformation? The muscle in Kale's jaw jumped. That's not the truth, boy. What did you feel? The silence stretched for an eternity. Sarah found herself holding her breath, watching Kale war with whatever he was about to admit. The bond, he finally gritted out. The mate bond. It snapped into place. Moira nodded as if this confirmed something she'd long suspected. The moon goddess works in mysterious ways. A moonborn and an alpha, bound by fate itself. Do you know what that means? It means the goddess has a twisted sense of humor, Kale muttered, running a hand through his dark hair in a gesture of frustration that made him look younger, less in control, almost vulnerable. Sarah's heart clenched. The mate bond hummed between them, and now that she knew it was there, she couldn't not feel it, that golden thread pulling her toward him, whispering that he was hers, that she was his, that they were meant to fit together like two halves of a whole. But he didn't want this. She could see it in every tense line of his body, in the way he kept careful distance between them, in the frustration bleeding through his carefully maintained control. He probably dreamed of mating someone like Vivian. Beautiful, powerful, normal. Not the broken girl who just transformed into every alpha's nightmare. The thought hurt more than all of Vivian's cruelty combined. It means, Moira continued, her voice taking on the cadence of the storyteller she'd been for 9 decades, that the old bloodlines are not as dead as we believed. It means the moon goddess has plans for this pack that we cannot yet see. And it means, she fixed Kale with a stern look, that you have a choice to make, Alpha Kale Nightshade. What choice? Kale's voice was carefully neutral, but Sarah heard the tension beneath it. Whether to honor the bond the goddess has given you, or to deny it and face the consequences. Moira's expression turned grave. But know this, moonborn mates are not like regular wolf mates. The bond between you will be stronger, more consuming. Fighting it will only bring pain to you both. And her power. She looked at Sarah with something like awe. Her power will only grow. She'll need guidance. Training. Protection. Protection from what? Kale demanded. From my own pack? From those who fear her, yes. From other packs who might want to control or eliminate her, certainly. And Moira's voice dropped low. From herself. Moonborn power is intoxicating, Alpha. Can corrupt. It can consume. She'll need an anchor to keep her grounded, to remind her of her humanity. The weight of Moira's words settled over the clearing like heavy snow. Sarah wanted to protest, to say that she'd never hurt anyone, that her power didn't scare her. But it did scare her. It scared her more than anything ever had. "You want me to take her as my mate," Cale said slowly, his eyes never leaving Sarah's massive white form. "To claim her publicly, in front of a pack that just watched her transform into something they've been taught to fear since childhood." "I want you to do what the moon goddess has clearly intended," Moira corrected. "What you do with that information is your choice. But choose quickly, Alpha. Because come morning the pack will demand answers. And if you don't have them," she let the implication hang, "they demand Sarah's exile. Or worse." Cale was silent for a long moment, his gaze locked with Sarah's. She tried to read his expression: anger? Fear? Resignation? But his alpha mask was firmly in place, revealing nothing. Finally he spoke, his voice low and controlled. "Can you shift her back? Use your knowledge of the old ways." Moira considered. "Perhaps. But it would be easier if you helped." "How?" "The mate bond. Let her feel it, truly feel it. It might give her an anchor to her human form." Moira smiled slightly. "Of course, that means you'll have to stop fighting it yourself." Cale's expression darkened. "You're asking me to." "I'm asking you to stop being so damn stubborn and accept what the goddess has given you," Moira snapped with surprising force. "That girl has been rejected and scorned her entire life. Do you really want to be another person who makes her feel unwanted?" The words hit Cale like a physical blow. Sarah saw something crack in his carefully maintained control. A flash of guilt, of shame, of something that might have been regret for never seeing her before tonight. "Fine," he gritted out. He turned to Sarah, and this time when their eyes met, she felt it. The mate bond blazing to life between them, no longer muted by his resistance. It hit her like lightning, warm and golden and absolutely overwhelming. "Mine," her wolf growled. "Ours, mate." "Sarah." Cale's voice wrapped around her name like a caress. "I know you're scared. I know this is all new and terrifying and wrong. But I need you to trust me." Can you do that? Could she? Trust the alpha who'd never noticed her? Who probably resented this bond as much as he was drawn to it. But what choice did she have? Slowly, carefully, Sarah nodded. Good. Cale moved closer, each step deliberate. I'm going to touch you now. Your wolf might not like it, but I need you to stay calm. Can you do that? Another nod, though her massive body tensed as he approached. He was tall, but she was huge in this form. Her shoulder reached his chest. When he stopped directly in front of her, she could feel the heat radiating from his skin, could smell pine and winter storms, and underneath it all, that scent that was purely Cale. Mate, her wolf whispered again, more insistent this time. Cale reached out slowly and placed his palm against her forehead, right between her silver eyes. His hand was warm, calloused, steady. The moment skin met fur, the mate bond flared so bright Sarah whimpered. Easy, Cale murmured. Feel the bond. Let it ground you. Let it remind you who you are beneath the wolf, Sarah Thorne. Human. Pack member. His voice dropped lower, more intimate. My mate. The last two words resonated through her entire being. The bond pulsed gold and silver, twining around her consciousness like a lifeline. And for the first time since her shift began, Sarah felt her wolf relax, felt her own humanity rise to the surface. That's it, Cale encouraged, his other hand joining the first, cupping her massive head gently. Come back to me, Sarah. Come back. She reached for her human form, and this time, anchored by his touch, by the bond, by his quiet commands, she felt it respond. Her body began to shift, shrinking, reforming, the white fur receding as skin emerged. The transformation was gentler this time, though still painful. But Cale's hands never left her, guiding her through it with steady presence. When it was over, Sarah knelt on the ground in her human form, gasping and shaking and utterly naked beneath the full moon's light. Cale immediately shrugged out of his ceremonial shirt and draped it over her shoulders, his movements practiced and impersonal even as the mate bond screamed at them both to get closer. Thank you, Sarah managed, her voice hoarse from screaming and howling and everything in between. Their eyes met, human to human now, silver to dark gray. And Sarah saw 100 emotions flicker across Kale's face before he locked them down behind his alpha mask once more. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "About what happens next. About what you are, and what it means for both of us." Sarah pulled his shirt tighter around herself, suddenly cold despite the warm night. "I understand if you don't want this. The bond, I mean. And I can leave. Find another pack or... You're not leaving." The command in his voice was absolute. "You're my mate, whether either of us planned for it or not. And I protect what's mine." The possessiveness in his tone should have annoyed her. Instead, it made something warm unfurl in her chest. "Besides," Kale continued, a wry smile tugging at his lips, "someone needs to teach you how to control that power of yours before you accidentally submit every alpha in a 100-mile radius." Despite everything, the fear, the confusion, the sheer impossibility of her situation, Sarah found herself smiling back. Maybe, just maybe, this disaster would turn into something worth fighting for. Have you ever had a moment when everything changed in an instant? When what you thought was your greatest weakness became your greatest strength? What do you think Sarah should do next? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And remember to like the video and subscribe for more. Dawn broke over the Silver Moon pack with all the subtlety of a funeral march. Sarah had spent what remained of the night in Kale's private quarters, not in his bed, he'd been careful to clarify, but in the adjoining guest room that probably cost more than everything she'd ever owned combined. She hadn't slept. How could she, when her entire world had shifted on its axis? When she finally emerged, dressed in clothes that Elder Moira had brought her, she found Kale standing at the window of his study, his shoulders tense with the weight of leadership. "They're gathering," he said without turning around. "The council has called an emergency meeting. They want answers about last night." "They want me gone," Sarah corrected quietly. "Some do." Kale finally turned to face her, and in the morning light, she could see the exhaustion etched into his features. He hadn't slept either. Others are merely afraid. Fear makes people do terrible things. "What about you?" The question escaped before Sarah could stop it. "Are you afraid of me?" Kale studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. "Yes," he finally admitted. "But not for the reasons you think." Before she could ask what he meant, a sharp knock interrupted them. Beta Thomas entered without waiting for permission, his expression grim. "The council is assembled, Alpha. They're insistent." "Let them be insistent," Kale replied coolly. "I'll address them when I'm ready." "With all due respect, Alpha, you may not have that luxury. There are rumblings of challenging your authority if you don't handle this situation appropriately." Thomas's gaze flicked to Sarah with barely concealed hostility. "Some believe you're compromised. That the mate bond has clouded your judgment." Kale's jaw tightened dangerously. "My judgment is perfectly clear, Beta. Is yours?" The tension between them crackled like lightning. Finally, Thomas bowed his head stiffly. "They're waiting in the council chamber. Both of you." The council chamber was a circular room at the heart of the pack house, its walls lined with portraits of previous alphas dating back generations. Sarah had never been inside before. Omegas and the Wolfless didn't attend pack councils. Now every eye in the room fixed on her with a mixture of fear, fascination, and fury. The council consisted of the pack's 7 elders, including Moira, plus Beta Thomas and the head warriors. They sat in a semicircle facing a raised platform where Kale would normally stand alone. Today, he guided Sarah to stand beside him, a deliberate statement that didn't go unnoticed. "Alpha Kale," Elder Marcus began, his voice heavy with concern, "we appreciate you attending this emergency session. The events of last night have raised serious questions about the pack's safety and future." "Then let's address them," Kale replied evenly. "Ask your questions." "Very well." Elder Thomasina, a severe woman with iron-gray hair, leaned forward. "What exactly is she? We deserve the truth." "Sarah is a moonborn," Kale stated simply. "A bloodline we believed extinct, but clearly survived in dormancy. The transformation triggered during the full moon ceremony." "Moonborn." The word rippled through the council like poison. "Do you understand what that means, Alpha? Our ancestors fled the Moonborn's tyranny. They were cruel absolute rulers who treated regular wolves as servants, as slaves. That was centuries ago. Elder Moira interjected sharply. You cannot hold this girl accountable for the sins of her distant ancestors. Can't we? Vivian's father, Beta Thomas, stood abruptly. She's been hiding among us for years, concealing what she truly is. I didn't know. Sarah's voice rang out before she could stop herself. Every head swiveled toward her, and she forced herself to continue despite her racing heart. I didn't know what I was. I thought I was broken, defective. I would have given anything to be normal, to be like all of you. Convenient, Vivian hissed from where she sat beside her father. Or perhaps you were waiting for the perfect moment to reveal yourself, to seize power. Enough. Kale's alpha command silenced the room instantly. Sarah has been a member of this pack her entire life. She's never shown aggression, never threatened anyone. Nothing has changed except your perception of her. Everything has changed. Elder Marcus slammed his hand on the armrest. She has the power to make alphas submit, to override pack hierarchy. If she chooses to challenge you, Alpha Kale, our entire structure collapses. Then it's fortunate she has no interest in challenging me, Kale replied calmly. How can you be certain? Thomasina demanded. How can any of us be certain she won't use that power to dominate us all? Because, Kale paused, and Sarah felt the weight of the decision he was about to make. Because she is my mate. The moon goddess herself has bound us. I would know if she harbored such intentions. The silence that followed was deafening. Your mate, Beta Thomas repeated slowly, dangerously. You would bind yourself, bind this pack to a moonborn? The goddess has already done the binding, Kale said. I'm simply acknowledging it. This is madness. Another elder stood, his face flushed with anger. You cannot take a moonborn as Luna. The other packs will see it as a threat, as preparation for war. Or they'll see it as a symbol of strength, Elder Moira countered. A pack led by both an alpha and a moonborn would be formidable indeed. Or it would paint a target on all our backs. Thomas's voice rose. Every pack with ambition would come for us, wanting to either control or eliminate the moonborn before she becomes too powerful. The argument erupted into chaos, voices overlapping as the council fractured into factions. Sarah stood frozen beside Kale, feeling the weight of their fear, their hatred, their terror of what she represented. She'd spent her whole life wanting to belong to this pack. Now she realized that might never be possible. Maybe they're right, she whispered to Kale beneath the arguing voices. Maybe I should leave. It would be easier for everyone. No. His hand found hers, the touch sending sparks through the mate bond. You're not running because they're afraid. Fear is their problem, not yours. Kale. Alpha Kale. The shout came from the doorway where a young warrior stood, panting. We have a situation. The Blackridge pack has sent envoys. They're demanding an audience. They know about her. The room fell silent. That's impossible, Beta Thomas said. How could they know already? Does it matter? Kale's expression hardened. How many envoys? 5 alpha. Led by their beta. They're waiting at the border, requesting immediate entry to discuss what they're calling a threat to all packs. Sarah's stomach dropped. This was it. The moment when her existence became everyone else's problem. When her strange gift turned into a weapon that others would either covet or destroy. Tell them they may enter, but they will be escorted and monitored at all times, Kale commanded. They have 1 hour. As the warrior rushed off, Kale turned back to his council. We will continue this discussion later. Right now we have guests to prepare for. Sarah, you're with me. Alpha, surely bringing her to the meeting is unwise, Thomas began. She is my mate and future Luna. Kale cut him off, his voice like steel. She has every right to be present. Any objections? No one dared voice one, though Sarah could feel their resentment like a physical weight. As they left the council chamber, Sarah's hand still clasped in Kale's, she finally understood what Elder Moira had meant about consequences. The mate bond wasn't just about love or destiny. It was about politics, power, and impossible choices. I'm sorry, she whispered as they walked the corridor toward his study. I'm sorry I'm making everything so complicated. Kale stopped, turning to face her fully. His free hand came up to cup her cheek, the gesture surprisingly tender. You didn't ask for this any more than I did, he said quietly. But we're in it now together. And I meant what I said, I protect what's mine. That includes you, Sarah. Whether you believe it or not. The mate bond hummed between them, warm and insistent. For the first time since her transformation, Sarah let herself lean into it, let herself feel the connection that the moon goddess had forged. What happens when the Blackridge envoys arrive? She asked. Kale's expression hardened. Then we show them that the Silver Moon Pack doesn't bow to threats. That our Moonborn is not a weapon to be feared, but a member of our pack to be respected. And if they don't accept that? His smile was sharp as a blade. Then they'll learn why I became Alpha at 23. And why no one has successfully challenged me since. The promise in his voice should have worried her. Instead, it made her feel something she hadn't felt in years. Safe. For the first time in her life, someone was choosing to stand with her instead of against her. The Alpha himself was declaring her worthy of protection, of belonging, of pack. Outside the window, storm clouds gathered on the horizon. The Blackridge envoys would arrive within the hour, bringing questions and accusations and demands that could tear the fragile peace apart. But as Kale's hand tightened around hers and the mate bond pulsed gold and silver between them, Sarah realized something profound. She was done hiding, done apologizing for existing, done making herself small to make others comfortable. If they wanted to fear the Moonborn, then let them fear. But they would learn to respect her too. Because she wasn't just the wolfless girl anymore. She was Sarah Thorne, Moonborn of the Silver Moon Pack. And she was done being afraid. The Blackridge envoys arrived exactly 1 hour later, their wolves sleek and battle-scarred as they shifted back to human form at the border. Their beta, a man named Garrett with a scar running from temple to jaw, wore an expression of barely concealed hostility as Kale's warriors escorted them to the main hall. Sarah stood beside Kale on the raised platform, dressed in formal pack attire that Elder Moira had somehow procured, deep blue that brought out the silver in her eyes. She could feel the weight of every stare, hear the whispered speculation from both packs. The Silver Moon Pack had assembled en masse, filling the hall to witness whatever came next. Sarah spotted Vivian in the crowd, her face twisted with bitter satisfaction, as if the rival pack's arrival proved all her warnings correct. Alpha Kale. Garrett's voice carried across the hall. Thank you for receiving us on such short notice. We come bearing concerns that affect all wolf packs in the region. Then speak your concerns, Beta Garrett, Kale replied, his tone diplomatic but firm. Though I'm curious how news travels so quickly between our territories. A thin smile crossed Garrett's scarred face. Information always finds a way, Alpha. Especially information about potential threats. His gaze shifted deliberately to Sarah. We've heard troubling rumors. That your pack harbors a Moonborn. That ancient power walks among regular wolves once more. Your intelligence is accurate, Kale said evenly, and shocked murmurs rippled through both groups. Sarah Thorne is indeed Moonborn. She is also my mate and future Luna of the Silver Moon Pack. Garrett's eyes widened fractionally, the only sign of surprise he allowed himself. You cannot be serious. Alpha, with all due respect, you're inviting catastrophe. The Moonborn nearly destroyed our kind centuries ago. They ruled with absolute power, crushed any who opposed them. That was then, Sarah heard herself say, her voice steady despite her thundering heart. I am not my ancestors. I seek no dominion over anyone. Pretty words, Garrett replied coldly. But power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Your very existence destabilizes the balance between packs. How long before you decide that Alpha should kneel before you? How long before this pack uses your power to conquer others? We have no such intentions, Kale stated firmly. Perhaps not today. But tomorrow? Next year. When she realizes the full extent of what she is. Garrett's voice rose, addressing the assembled wolves now. We cannot allow this threat to fester. My Alpha demands that the Moonborn be exiled from pack lands, all pack lands. Let her live as a rogue if she must, but she cannot remain among civilized wolves. No. Kale's single word cracked like thunder. Sarah is mine to protect. She remains with this pack. Then the Blackridge Pack officially declares the Silver Moon Pack a threat to regional stability, Garrett announced. We will be forced to take action. You'll do nothing. The command came not from Kale, but from Sarah herself, and she felt her wolf rising to the surface as she spoke. Her eyes began to glow silver, and the temperature in the hall seemed to drop. You come into our territory, demand we cast out one of our own, threaten us with violence? No. That ends now. Power radiated from her in waves. Not aggressive, not attacking, but undeniable. Every wolf in the hall felt it. That primal pull that made their instincts scream in confused reverence. Garrett took an involuntary step backward. You see. His voice pitched higher. She cannot control it. She's dangerous. I am in perfect control, Sarah said quietly, and the power receded as quickly as it had risen. But I will not be threatened in my own pack house. I will not be exiled because you fear what you don't understand. She stepped forward, descending from the platform, and Kale moved with her. Not restraining but supporting. They approached Garrett together, united. I understand your fear, Sarah continued, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. I've lived with fear my whole life. Fear that I was broken, defective, unworthy. But I'm done letting fear control me. And I'm done letting others' fear define who I am. She stopped directly in front of Garrett, and though he was taller and broader, she met his gaze without flinching. I am Moonborn. That's true. But I'm also just a girl who wants to belong, who wants to build rather than destroy, who wants to use this power to protect rather than dominate. Her voice softened. Give me the chance to prove that. Give me the chance to show you that the old stories don't have to define the future. Garrett stared at her, conflict warring across his scarred features. Behind him, his warriors shifted nervously, clearly affected by her words, by the sincerity bleeding through every syllable. And if we don't? Garrett finally asked. If my alpha insists on your exile? Kale stepped forward then, his presence commanding. Then your alpha will have to go through me. Through this entire pack. We stand together, Beta Garrett. That's what pack means, standing with your own. Especially when it's difficult. Especially when others demand otherwise. A murmur of agreement rippled through the Silvermoon wolves. Even some who had argued against Sarah in the council chamber now stood straighter, their expressions shifting from fear to something like pride. You would risk war for her? Garrett's question held genuine confusion. I would risk everything for my mate, Kale replied simply. As any true alpha would. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The mate bond blazed between Sarah and Kale, visible to anyone with eyes to see. That golden-silver thread that proclaimed them bound by the moon goddess herself. Finally, Garrett exhaled slowly. I will relay your position to my alpha. But know this. Other packs will hear of the Moonborn's return. Some will respond with fear. Others with ambition. You've painted a target on your backs. Let them come, Kale said calmly. The Silvermoon pack has weathered threats before. We'll weather them again. Garrett studied them both for a long moment, then bowed his head in reluctant respect. May the moon goddess guide you both. You'll need her favor in the days ahead. He gestured to his warriors. We're leaving. As the Blackridge envoys departed, tension slowly bled from the hall. Wolves began to murmur to process what they'd witnessed. Their alpha declaring unwavering support for the Moonborn. The Moonborn showing both power and restraint, and the mate bond that tied them together. Elder Moira approached the platform, her milky eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Well spoken, child. You're learning already that power without wisdom is just destruction. But wisdom without power is merely words. Thank you, Elder, Sarah said softly. Don't thank me yet. The hard part is just beginning. Moira's gaze shifted to encompass the assembled pack. But I believe you're both up to the challenge. Over the following hours, as the pack slowly dispersed and life attempted to return to normal, Sarah felt the subtle shifts in how others looked at her. The outright hostility had muted into wary respect. Fear remained, but it was tempered now by curiosity, by the possibility that maybe, just maybe, the Moonborn among them could be an asset rather than a threat. Vivian still glared with undisguised hatred, but even she kept her distance, her father's hand on her shoulder preventing another confrontation. As evening fell, Kale led Sarah to the pack house roof, a place where alphas traditionally went to think, to commune with the moon in solitude. You were remarkable today, he said quietly as they stood beneath the emerging stars, standing up to Garrett showing both strength and compassion. That took courage. I had a good example, Sarah replied, glancing at him. You stood with me when you could have chosen the easier path. When your own pack questioned your judgment. The easier path is rarely the right one. Cale turned to face her fully, and in the moonlight, his features seemed softer, more open. I won't lie to you, Sarah. This won't be easy. We'll face challenges from outside and within. But, he reached for her hand, his thumb brushing across her knuckles. I meant what I said. You're mine to protect. My mate. My future Luna. The mate bond hummed between them, no longer fought or denied but accepted. Sarah felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of finally being chosen, being wanted, being enough. I don't know how to be a Luna, she whispered. Good thing you'll have an alpha to help you learn, Cale replied with a small smile. We'll figure it out together. One day at a time. He pulled her closer, and Sarah let herself lean into his warmth, into the solid strength of him. The moon rose higher, full and bright, bathing them both in silver light. The moon goddess knew what she was doing, Sarah murmured against his chest. Binding us together. You're the anchor I need. And maybe I'm the change you needed. Maybe you are, Cale agreed. He tilted her chin up, his dark eyes searching hers. Are you ready for this? For everything it means. Sarah thought of the years spent in shadows, convinced she was broken. She thought of the transformation that had revealed her truth. She thought of the challenges ahead, the fear, the politics, the constant proving of herself. And then she thought of standing beside this alpha, of having a pack that would learn to accept her, of building something new from the ashes of old prejudices. I'm ready, she said firmly. Cale's lips curved into a genuine smile, the first real smile she'd ever seen from him. Then let's show them what a moonborn and an alpha can do together. He kissed her then, beneath the full moon that had witnessed her transformation, and the mate bond blazed bright enough to rival the stars themselves. When they finally pulled apart, Sarah felt fundamentally changed, not by power or wolf or ancient bloodlines, but by the simple, profound act of being chosen. She'd spent 22 years believing she was nothing. Now she knew better. She was Sarah Thorne, moonborn of the Silver Moon Pack, mate to Alpha Cale Nightshade. And her story was just beginning. Far below, the pack settled in for the night, unaware that above them, two souls bound by fate were forging a new path forward. One that would reshape pack dynamics, challenge centuries of fear, and prove that the greatest power wasn't domination. It was love. It was belonging. It was finally beautifully coming home. When Sarah finally accepted who she was, everything changed. Have you ever discovered something about yourself that scared you at first, but later became your greatest strength? Share your transformation story below. Your journey matters. Crescent Moon, and if you're enjoying this, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more.